Thanks for joining me,
Happy
everybody.
birthday.
I didn't expect such a big turnout. All right. Kyla, thank you so much for jumping in and helping out.
Of course, the recording has started for you, Bradley.
No problem. And then we'll just kind of go through. I'll shoot you a message when we wrap up if that works.
Yep,
Yeah.
sounds good.
Great. Thanks again. Okay, everybody, without any further ado, we'll jump right into things. I'll hand over to Nathan for call into order and roll call, and then we'll pass over to Christina.
Oh, I'll just call the roll call.
Present.
Christina Varsky is present. Camille Flood
Present.
is here. Denver is
Present.
fine. Catherine Nygaard,
Present.
Amber Schaefer, Susan Mace,
Present.
Travis Hoffman,
Present.
Sarah Bentler, Todd Mowbray, present. Marilyn Ryan, Rebecca Dawson,
Present.
Kathy Whitman,
Present.
Mr. Josh Slotnick. Any other county officials or other members of the public that I have not mentioned other than Bradley and myself? Who else I didn't mention? Great. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, you want me to, all right.
Please.
So everybody should have received an agenda sent out from Nathan, in addition to a series of additional documents and a link to the EA update. I would like to ask for a motion to approve the agenda as posted.
So moved.
For a second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
I think that was in favor, aye, is that correct?
Yes, sorry, I was slow with the mute button.
No, it's great. It's a good reminder for me to slow down. Any abstentions? Okay, so then our next agenda item, Bradley, do you want me to go through approval of minutes?
With these great recorded minutes, what we've been able to do is we really hit a couple of requests from the public. We've been recording them. You notice me taking notes here, putting in timestamps and chapters to make it even easier to just jump right into the business. And with these recordings, it's really nice because we never have any typos. That's what.
Did you have a question? No. Oh, no, that's okay. I'm just checking. No apologies. Okay, so we're gonna move to approve the minutes. Do you want me to take an official motion on that, Bradley? Is that
Sure.
okay? Could I get a motion to approve the minutes and the recorded meeting from January 10th?
So,
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right. The next item on our agenda is public comment for items not included in the agenda. Okay. They teach you in PhD school to be comfortable in false times. Old business. We don't have anything under old business. Is there anything that's not on the agenda that you need to mention, Bradley?
No, I did just want to briefly touch base on educational outreach. We had a group reach out to us and we were really excited to reference them through to the videos we produced. So they asked a lot about the different processes and policies we use. We did not have a very high turnout for our last set of tours. We had many tours that had one person who came into attendance. So for this upcoming election, we decided not to proceed forward, noting that when we get to the November election, there'll probably be a lot more heightened interest with a wide open race for mayor and multiple different city council seats. And so as we go through that, we'll likely have them back for that November election. But we were able to say, here's some great information about all of our practices and policies. We went to the website, found our current election information, found this information from those videos, and it's so nice to have those be really well utilized. And these groups go out to different schools, they reach out, they ask to partner with us. anytime we're asked to partner, we're very cautious. I want to make sure that these groups do not support issues or candidates on the ballot. So before proceeding any further forward, we're going to make sure that we can get some sort of assurance that yes, you're not supporting any issues or candidates on the ballots now, in the past, or in the future. It's a really fine line to walk, and we want to be educational, but we don't want to have anybody think that we're partnering with groups to help support an issue or a candidate or any other thing that might come up from that. So I'm kind of excited because that's been something we had discussed in here. Really working to try and get more education, more information out towards those schools. And well, I haven't had the great opportunity to go out, reach out to any principals or superintendents. It was nice to have that information and have it so readily available.
Rebecca.
I just wanted to ask, did you say that all of the videos are available on the elections website?
Yeah, you can locate them from the website with the How Missoula County Ensures Election Integrity, and then our YouTube page has them all. So you can find Missoula Votes YouTube with information on judge training, information on other educational videos, and then of course all of these are on the Missoula County Elections Advisory Committee. So both on the website and on YouTube.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Who was the group, if you can,
Yeah, it was Forward Montana Foundation.
oh, okay,
And so there's a lot of different chunks of Forward Montana.
right.
That's why I was so cautious. And I said, hey, let's follow up on this. Also, I'm really excited about this because it was something the EAC had asked for. I don't know what their curriculum looks like. I don't know what schools they're in. And I know that Forward Montana, or a portion of Forward Montana, I know there's two chunks of it. One supports issues and candidates, and the other one's educational. So we really took that slow and said, hey, how can we help partner? How can we help find something? And then how can we dig in further? And so the best area was take a look at what we've already produced.
Yeah.
It's out there for everybody. And then going from there, we're going to approach it. We're going to work. I'm going to reach out to their ED and we're going to see what might make sense. And follow that up with you all because I know Susan, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the screen to Susan's emblem, had really said, hey, can we get this into the schools? Can we get this into some curriculum? I'm a really big fan of getting it into the curriculum through the school district, through those principals. But with this request from the EAC and a request from an independent group, especially for the videos we've already produced that are on our website, what a great area. And then when we get to the fall, we'll do the same thing. Come to these public tours. We'll invite every elected official, we'll invite every candidate, and then we'll also invite members of the media to come in and make sure that that is as widely extended as possible. You guys all know this really well. I'm a big fan of everybody gets the same information at the same time.
I think your caution is really commendable because in these hyper partisan times, you can't be too careful.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then you don't even want somebody feeling like there might be this.
Right.
So really taking time, using the information we produced. I mean, this was a big request, much of it from the EAC. And also, you know, it was a big funding. It was a big budget request as we went through. And I really want those to be utilized as much as possible. Denver, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you were trying to listen in there and I was like, I can be loud.
No, I was just mulling over a thought, but go right ahead.
So that's the only thing that ties really into that old business. I did get a chance to look through the voter guide that
Oh, good.
Todd had brought in. That is a substantial publication. And we had some general discussions about how can we help provide information out? How can the county be a part of this? And how can elections remain incredibly neutral? That's a really tough road to navigate through. But we had a couple of ideas that came forward about potentially making sure that county officials or county departments describe what does the county commissioner do? And so we can have that explanation being like, this is what the job is. This is what it looks like. It's, I always think of auditor. When I came in here, I didn't totally understand what an auditor did. I knew they checked our books. I knew that they went through and made sure money was spent correctly. There's so much more that an auditor can do. And is there a way we can build that in? These are long-term projects. These can be an old business and we'll keep working on them. I'm always so cautious because coming to elections means that they think we're a great non-biased, nonpartisan source of info, and I want to maintain that.
Well, the King County booklet that I gave you has lots of disclaimers, and I think they let the candidates and the issue groups write their own thing, and then there's a big disclaimer across the top that it wasn't produced by the county.
Yeah, and as we come into this next chunk, I'll talk a little bit about the database and some of the potentials that may come from the database in the future. Because with all this technology, we're just growing.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you looked at it. Thank you for considering.
Yeah, absolutely. That's my chunk. of
That's the same. Thanks,
business.
Bradley. That sounds great. And I appreciate you always being cautious about making sure we're representing all people in this work that we're doing. Is there any additional old business that folks want to bring to attention? All right, moving forward. I like this efficiency. Election administrator update. Bradley sent out a link, or Nathan sent out a link to the resources for today's meeting that included a link to Bradley's election administrator update video that he's been recording, right? So it can be made public. It's not just to us in this room. I hope folks had a chance to view it. When I looked at it, there's only one other viewer, so I know some people probably didn't. So Bradley, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the pieces on your EA update?
Yes, please. And really 3 big issues, guys. We've got a legislative session in full motion right now. We have a redistricting plan that we've been working hard on that needs extra work. And then we also have a brand new voter database that we're using for this upcoming school district election. I'm going to start with the redistricting plan. One of the 2 items that we sent out was the updated precinct boundaries. The way that this process works is that the state district and apportionment commission meets and decides new House district and Senate district boundaries. House district is one of the geographic blocks. You can see them on the map, and the Senate district is comprised of 2 of those different blocks together. The next step is that in a 45-day window from when these maps are approved at the Secretary of State, elections offices have that 45-day time frame to divide out each different House district into precincts. Now, you may have heard me mention the legislative session in full cycle because there's a couple of different bills at the legislature that are impacting the way that we redistrict. And we worked hard to incorporate these bills, even though they're not fully through the legislative process yet, but to the best of our abilities. And we also wanted to make sure that we were doing the best we could for equal precinct sizes. As we go through this process, there's a new bill at the legislature which states that no precinct should be larger than 2,000 voters. This is going through an amendment that upped it up to 2,500 voters and explained the process of when we need to redraw these lines. That's important because as we go through to redraw these lines, we want to look and say, I don't want to have to redistrict every time an apartment building comes up into a precinct and voters move in. However, it makes sense to not have precincts that had grown to the size that we saw in Missoula County. Hellgate 96 East was 6,900 voters. We have other precincts that were 312 voters. And this was strictly due to the growth and development in the Valley of Missoula. Well, where that impacts us as elections offices are that 6,900 voters are in the same precinct, and precincts serve 2 basic purposes. It's the smallest geographical boundary, so the smallest area on the map we use in elections. It covers your ballot style. We use this for rotation in a federal election. So this is going to be whether the president with the last name of A shows up first or the president with the last name of Z shows up first. And it's rotated by those precincts. The other area is central committees. Political parties that are established and have a central committee can elect 1 precinct committee man and 1 precinct committee woman from each of these different precincts. As we went through, we were trying to incorporate these new sizes, should they be adopted and fully implemented. There is no current cap. There have been requests from others to balance them as much as possible, and that is the intent of that law. We had to look at this cap of 2,000 to 2,500 and this growth potential. So the new law that's not quite finished yet, and it's on our list that we'll cover next, really hit that if it grows over 3,750, it should be divided. I've learned a lot going through this process. I've learned a lot about graphical interface systems. Is it geographic? I'm looking at Cam, and
Information.
it is so unique with the amount that we were able to work with the county to produce this level of detail to make these maps. What we did is we took every census block, and then we took the number of voters, and we used those census blocks to help us draw these lines. As we went through this, I did everything I could to keep them to 2,000 voters. There was one that was 2,014 voters. And as we drew those out, we wanted to make sure that the lines also made sense. On that inset that you can see there, we worked hard to follow main roads, not to zigzag through the neighborhood, but to be able to say that if you live on this side of Brook Street, you vote in precinct 6. If you live in this side of Brook Street, you vote in precinct 7. In addition to that, we wanted to make sure that we kept them as uniform as possible, and then you get to the rural areas. We've got a chunk of House District 76. And in that entire precinct, there are 1,200 voters. That's the whole chunk of the House District we have, so it can't be 2,000. And then you get to other areas where there's a mountain range or a wilderness area that's dividing this. So some of these precincts are smaller, but we worked so hard to try and help balance them the best we could. As we go through this last week, we presented this map, and I refer to it as our preliminary map, but it is our map. It is just the first step out of many we're going to take. We want to go through, finish up this upcoming school election, and in June, we want to hold a series of presentations on this map, as well as where voters go to vote. More so than what precinct or what ballot style I'm in, voters want to know, where do I go to vote? And we want to explore that and look really closely. The last time we did this was 10 years ago, and we had substantially more polling place voters than we have now. The atmosphere around public entering elementary schools has changed drastically over the last 10 years. We want to work closely with all of the stakeholders in elections to hear feedback, present a plan of what we think will work, and take that feedback to make it the best compromise we can have, forgive me, that's me, between both voters and the public. So as voters, the public, and our office. So as we go through this, we're going to come up with a plan we have based off the data we have, number of voters, locations, access, and whether or not we've been invited back to some of these locations. As we go through this process, we also want to say, these are all the stakeholders in elections. And what makes the most sense to you? If it's as easy as moving this line between precinct 27 and 28 a block over, we can probably accommodate that. If it is something that states that every precinct shall have 3 polling locations that are all ADA accessible inside that precinct, that's not something we can staff, accommodate, or find those locations. But we want to make this a very transparent public process. That's exceptionally hard to do with an ongoing legislative session that's changing the rules and a 45-day timeline. So we took this and we created this map. Come June, we will present this. We'll open a public comment period. And in July, we'll take that public comment and come up with a final plan and put that plan into the statewide voter database. That will generate new voter confirmation cards and allow great public feedback on that. We need help. We're an office of 5. We need public input to make these decisions the best that they can be for the county. So that's my redistricting update. Everybody has a copy of this map. I refer to it as our preliminary map. When we voted on this, I was working hard to explain this in the last meeting. It becomes our map and it's implemented, but we don't have to just do this once every 10 years. We can do this with the public feedback, and when a precinct grows and it becomes over that 3,750, we can divide that precinct into 2 and make sure that we're keeping smaller precincts. Another area this comes up is in our post-election audit. And the post-election audit, we're going to hand count ballots to make sure that our equipment functioned correctly. And I tell you what, every time they were rolling the dice to select them, we thought, please don't pick Hellgate 96 East. It's 7,000 ballots. And that's not the purpose or the intent behind this. So dividing them makes so much sense. And we're taking a new look at this with the tools we've been able to utilize, this project is so much more doable. And it makes it so much easier for us to take and have that feedback. Questions about redistricting?
This is Travis, just a comment. Just as part of county government and a function of government, everything that this office does needs to be ADA accessible at a minimum. So,
Yeah, and that's exactly one of the things we'll be bringing up when it comes to the polling places. We've had a few that are not ADA accessible anymore. And those ones are going to be ones that we look for a replacement for. And if we can't find a replacement, potentially a consolidation. And that will be part of that discussion that really tags around what people tend to be more interested in, not so much what precinct or what ballot style, but where do I go to vote? So yes, work hard to hit that.
Wait, my question was, I read in the Missoula that there are 11 new voting places,
11 new precincts.
11 new precincts. But see, that's what I'm saying. People always talk about where to vote. Anyway, where are they?
So each of the precincts that came in, we've got a great map that we're working on getting out this next week and up to our website. So you can see the previous precincts as well as these current and overlay them over top of them. What they tended to be is that Hellgate 96 East became 3 different precincts.
Okay.
Now, every precinct must follow the House district boundary. So I can't have a precinct that covers into 2 different House districts. From there, it is at our discretion, as equal as possible, and working hard to make sure that they have sensible boundaries. My first take on this, I had some zigzag lines running through the city in my old neighborhood, and I thought, oh, you never know what precinct you go to vote in.
Mhm.
And so we really worked at this and we used existing boundaries wherever we could. Those existing boundaries are important because voters want to know where they go to vote. And as we go through this process, we're working hard. We've got an equality coordinator I hope I said that right. Equity, Alicia, sorry. She's been a part of this discussion, and then we'll also do similar to what we've done for our tours, reaching out to all of those stakeholders, making sure there's time to advertise, time to present, and then a good chunk of public comment time. This is a similar fashion to what they use at the statewide level. This is not a requirement. This is just something that Missoula County cares about and wants to work hard on.
I have a quick question, others of you. I'm wondering, thinking about the June efforts you mentioned at the end, you need some support. What are the things that we can do as the EAC maybe in supporting the public comment period on this or in preparation for June? Are there any asks that you have?
Yes, Travis. As I'm coming through on this, Travis has been a very active part of helping us with ADA surveys of different locations. I've got a couple of areas that I'm cautious about that I want to reach out to Travis. I want to go and do a survey on. Here's what we hit. We strive to get public comments, public participation. We had a very, very similar process when we looked at transitioning to central count versus precinct count. We worked closely with the EAC. We held a public meeting. We had 2 weeks of public comment, of which we received 2 comments. One that was provided during that period, and one from somebody who happened to be at our follow-up meeting who said, that sounds like a great idea. What we need is helping make sure that people understand that. I saw that Missoulian article and it did say we would be following up on this, but we need to make sure that people know about this, that it's accessible. So we'll have a great chunk of our website. We're building it out right now. It's our redistricting portion of our website, and we'll link to the public comment area. We'll present maps. We'll have these overlays, but we need help making sure that all stakeholders feel heard. That means finding stakeholders too.
Will you be preparing a sort of list of bullet points that we could use for letters to the editor?
Yes, and essentially those will be, this is the time to make sure that your voice is heard in this process.
Yeah.
And the summary of what I just described.
Like dates and places, and we could write letters to the editor saying, hey, this is coming up.
And make sure we take place in that. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
It's such a cautious area. You hear me really focusing on making sure that people are aware of this process. The impact for an election office is very minimal. The other impacts that can be for central committees or political purposes are different. And we're always trying to thread that needle. I see Denver or Rebecca has had her hand up too.
Rebecca, please, sorry, I have to remember to look up at the screen.
Yeah, my question is, when it's finalized and the boundaries are drawn, when are they effective? And also at what point would the newly created precincts committeemen and committeewomen be elected?
So committeemen and women elections are always taking place on with the primary election, and there's a few different ways that they can take place. They can be run by a county elections office. They can be done by appointment within the central committee or election within the central committee. I need to confirm with the bylaws of each of the different central committees. I would believe that they would serve until the next election. And the next election will be based off of the new precincts. These precincts, the first time they'll be utilized is for the 2024 primary election. I'm looking right at
Thank
Cammy,
you.
see if she knows a little bit too.
I agree with what you said.
Okay, and also you heard that one big caveat. Got to check with those bylaws and confirm. I've been receiving a lot of questions about how this process works. And it's so interesting because our involvement is running that election. From there, with different vacancies and appointments, we're really hands off until that next election cycle, every even numbered year in June.
To clarify, then, this coming primary will be using the old precincts.
So for the municipal election, it actually runs off of the wards. It's run by district and not by
Yeah,
precincts.
the next primary, yeah.
And so the next primary election in 2024 will utilize
Okay,
these new ones.
right.
And my big goal is to mirror that great naming nomenclature that Vicky put before us. This is your polling location and this is your house district. Right now, you'll notice it's P1 through 63. I really wanted to have this robust discussion and decide where it goes before we enter this in the database, send out confirmation cards to voters, and then potentially change that information. Did I get both your questions, Rebecca and Todd?
Yes, thank you.
No problem.
I kind of feel like from working out the elections, it would be really great if they knew which precinct they were in too, because that affects which ballots they get. And you would not believe how many people have no idea what precinct they're in. Or have a
Yeah.
30-year-old voter card that's wrong,
Right.
yeah.
And that's exactly it. So it'll be on those cards. It'll be really clear there. That was so helpful for us. Where you go to vote and then the House district. And then the breakdown was north, south, east, west. With the number of precincts that we now have, it might be north, south, east, west, northeast, southeast, southwest, to accommodate them all at these polling locations. What we're seeing is really the number of voters that are going to some of these locations have dropped by over 50% since 2013, which is the last cycle we did this. So we can put more precincts to one polling location and still be serving the same total number of voters. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Great.
I agree with
Hey,
you about.
Bradley,
Sorry.
sorry, I didn't raise my hand.
They don't know which line to get in there when they come
Yeah.
in.
Just a quick suggestion is, and I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but as you're renaming these different precincts, the new precincts, I live in 96 East, so yes, we've grown exponentially, but it may be worth it just 96 East 1, 96 East 2, instead of trying to add Northwest, Northwest, all that kind of fun stuff.
Yes, let me come up with some ideas and include that in part of this discussion, because it could be based off of where you go to vote, your house district, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, making it a little bit easier for voters. And I love that idea because the goal is for us to make it as easy for voters to know where they're going, what line to get in, and how to go through that process. Most of our house districts changed. So a lot of that region is now going to be either in House District 97 or 98, which can still be Hellgate 97.1.2 instead of north, northeast, east, north by northeast. We could really go through this.
What about geographic designators, like districts or Reno or
with naming them by the location that voters go to vote, it was so helpful for us in our office and for voters.
Get two birds in one stone.
Because then we're really helping clarify.
Yeah, so
And that's what we had tried to do with the northeast south. It was everybody who's going to Greeno is, it was Potomac, the Potomac Greeno Community Center was Potomac 92. That way we could help denote where they were going. As we had to consolidate a few polling places, it got a little confusing. Chief Charlot's now voting at Cold Springs. It was a little bit tougher.
Yeah.
Knowing what we know now, we could have renamed those precincts. Chief Charlotte .1 or north, or Cold Springs .1 or north, and then south or .2. I'm writing down the note right now because I kind of like .1, .2. We'll think about this, we'll go through this, we'll present it, and we'll take feedback. I don't want to make these decisions in a vacuum. With 45 days, I felt like I was drawing these in a vacuum, and we knew that we would take that public comment.
People don't know east and west.
It's not like we don't have any great landmarks.
We just gotta know.
No, thanks for thinking about these pieces, Bradley, and being open to the feedback.
So the northeast, southwest,
Well, and with that, .1, .2 may be so much easier.
yes.
Do I see a hand up? No, I don't. I don't. Do I?
No.
No.
I don't. I think you're seeing things.
I might be running real slow. Okay.
My fault. I had a thought I was gonna ask and then answered it myself, so withdrew my question.
Perfect, because I was just trying to make sure we didn't miss anybody online. Okay, guys, I'll be mindful of everybody's time. You know I can talk about elections all day. I want to talk really briefly about some of the different bills that are out there. This legislative session had more election bills than any other session that has ever come forward. Many of these bills never made it past the draft format with LC number. Many of these bills have either not made it through transmittal, been tabled in committee, or have been amended to be much, much better towards elections. This has been a really, really exciting year as we go through elections, and I want to hit a couple of the main ones that were out.
these ones that are still alive.
These ones are ones that are still alive and going through, and you got that great spreadsheet that got sent out there, and you can click the link to see where they're at. Forgive me, guys, this was the status of them all on the 5th. They are changing on an hour by hour basis. I love seeing the legislators nodding their head, the former legislators, everybody's participating. I wanted to talk about absentee ballot list procedures. This one was important because what had happened with this was it was written with the intention to mirror the laws between a polling place election and a mail ballot election. In a mail ballot election, we'll send you a notice if your ballot comes back as undeliverable. Ballots are always return service, so they have to come back as undeliverable. The notice is forwarding service. And what happened was that if it's mail ballot and that notice that your ballot's undeliverable, the forwarding one, the second notice comes back, you're inactivated. You're still considered an eligible voter, but you're not automatically sent a ballot in the mail. When this bill originally came out, it did the same thing for a polling place election. However, it said you must come into the office in person to reactivate your registration. That has been amended out, and now it mirrors those rules. When it comes from an election administrator standpoint, you can see that we're neutral on that. I like it when rules are uniform. When rules are easier to explain to voters. In this election, you're inactivated. In this election, you're not. Making them set, making them uniform does help adjust that.
So when you say we're neutral, are you talking about the elections office or the county or
So that's the county and the elections office as we went through.
the county and the
Yep,
elections office?
and so almost exclusively, we agreed in them. There's a few that I would say I'm gonna step out of that because it's a little too political. So as we went through there, I wanted to hit that.
Listen in.
No problem. Thank you, Josh. Great to see you.
Thanks for coming.
So a few of these other ones, you can only release the last 4 of the social. If we do that anyway, put it in the code, great. One that is going forward that is being heard. This is one that was a little bit different. the county is at an oppose all elections on even numbered years in June and November. This would move our municipals, this would move our schools, this would move our special districts, so all elections would take place. The reason that I had said, I don't know where we should sit at that is there's a study, a task force right now to explore moving the school elections. School elections are at a very specific time frame because of funding requirements for schools. So the Office of Public Instruction, the Secretary of State had an idea at the beginning of this legislature. I read a lot of bills that were going to combine everything and move them. And they decided the best bet was to create a task force, explore this, and make sure that they're approaching this in the smartest way. What does this mean? Multiple bills accomplishing the same thing over the next session if it's a good idea. As we jump down, I wanted to show here that 90 days to redistrict instead of 45 days is moving forward. This one hasn't been signed yet. It was, when I last saw it, had been concurred in the second chamber, so it was on its way to the floor for a vote. As we saw this, we just talked about the fact that we had 45 days to do this with an upcoming election, and at 90 days would be in the summer. It's pretty much exactly what we're planning. It's just giving those election administrators more time. Okay, partisan election judges, Senate Bill 385. This one has since been amended even from this. I wrote this in the morning. On the afternoon of the 5th, it got amended. What this required you to do was to reach out, do the same task that we've currently been doing, reaching out to central committees, asking for a list of judges. This is so hard in Missoula. We're so big. We also have a $76,000 going out for a school election. So we run our trainings in February. There is a requirement that parties can provide you a list of voters and you schedule those voters through. They also have to be trained. So how do I accomplish this? Starting in about December, I reach out, I go to central committee members, committee meetings, and ask for people to sign up to be trained as election judges. We go through and we ask people to self-identify with a party affiliation so we can do everything we can to balance boards so that there's not a majority of one party. At the time, this bill stated that you would first work with those lists provided before scheduling nonpartisan. In Missoula County, rough numbers, about 295 Democrats, 73 Republicans, and I want to say 280 who had minor party affiliation or no party affiliation. Some of these being continually trained people who come back year after year, polling place managers. This was a really tough one because this would mean we'd have to schedule people on the list provided by the parties before this. That has since been amended to say if those lists are lacking, you reach back out and you say, are there any other people we can get? I just plan on hounding and saying, get us as many people as you can. Get us as many people as you can to balance that the best we can. We want to still continue with our current plan of asking people what their affiliation is, because even if we don't have those lists, then we can balance it and we can say we have one person who serves under their identified Republican Party or on the list, or their identified Democratic Party or on the list, and one no partisan to balance that board. That's really, really been helpful for our office in helping make sure that people feel confident in the work we're doing. In addition to that, there was a requirement in this bill that stated you needed one chief election judge or polling place manager per precinct. We don't have enough. We had 28 polling locations, and it was hard for us to staff enough chief election judges, and many of them, Hellgate has 5 precincts voting there. We worked really closely with the sponsor of the bill. Sponsor of the bill was great about hearing our concerns, working with us, and we were able to come up with friendly amendments that have made this bill something that I can buy in for. Yes, we'll ask the parties for an additional list if we see that it doesn't balance 50-50. In a county like Missoula, I love this. I worked with Ravalli County election administrator a ton on this, and we were like, same shoes, different foot. Yes, we'll reach out multiple times. We'll ask for additional judges. That worked out very well for us, and it got amended and is now a pretty good bill. I'm very happy about this one.
Can we ask a quick question?
Please, I'll shoot through them all.
Is this going to require that people in the state of Montana register to vote by party affiliation?
Nope. And the same.
And
laws
so
for
then
singles work.
how can you demand that there'll be X number of Democrats, X number of Republicans?
And we don't demand it. Whenever possible, we work to balance it. And if the lists are insufficient, we can fill in with those no party. And that was the big part we needed as election administrators.
Right. But, you know, there are people who will say that, well, we've got to be sure and have X number to balance this up. And it can't be done unless you require people to register by party. And I don't think we're ready to do that in the state of Montana.
Yep, and this bill does not require that.
Good.
It's just kind of pushing us towards the same practices we've been doing. If you don't get the lists, you're not required to meet that at all. Now, hopefully we'll get the list and we'll ask for additional people. The next one's really near and dear to me. It is write-ins are required for everybody in order to have their write-in vote counted, write-in declarations. If you want to run as a write-in candidate, you need to fill out a declaration of intent as a write-in candidate. I work closely with the association to help draft this bill, put this forward. What we run into is in the primary election in Missoula County, we normally have multiple party ballots. We had a Libertarian Party ballot in Senate District 45 in the 2020 election for one candidate. Every other race was wide open. So what that meant is we had to count every single name written in, regardless of the fact that nobody filed as a write-in candidate for the Libertarian Party. This balances and matches every single other election. We actually utilized the language from the precinct committee men and women, where it requires you to file that declaration of intent as a write-in candidate. In a school election, if you don't file a declaration of intent, then that election is canceled and the people who did file are elected by acclamation, same as a special district. And for a general election, you must have filed that declaration of intent as well. In the 2022 primary election, we used 251 man hours and just over $3,000, counting every Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, no one else, every write-in vote on an open race. In order to be elected, you had to receive 5% of the last successful candidate for a general election, and nobody came even close. I think it was like 0.02%. This was a great way for us to all work closely across the state. This bill went through the legislative session and it was 96-3 in the House, 96 voting for, and I think it was 48-1 in the Senate. It had strong support. It's going through. It's at the governor's desk. I'm going to even see if I can't zip down for a quick bill signing. This is a great way for us to maximize our efforts in the election and also make sure that we're using taxpayer dollars effectively. On election day, there's a lot of things we can be doing, and counting everybody who gets written in, and it tends to be where somebody hasn't filed. One of the best examples I have was always Tyler Gurnett was written in for clerk and recorder on the Republican Party ballot. People don't want to not be able to vote in that race, but also those votes, we counted them, we tracked them, and we sent them forward. And so with this, it's really about maximizing our efforts and time. And then I did see a question online.
Denver. It's smaller there. It's like harder to see than here. Sorry.
Thank you. So I actually have a legitimate comment at this point. So I think it's a really positive sign that the bill sponsors were willing to take our advice and feedback. And I think that one thing that we may want to consider as a committee is writing a resolution thanking and identifying those bill sponsors that did work with us in a responsible way to hear and meet our concerns. In the legislature, a lot of people are making requests. A lot of people are saying, please vote yes on this bill, no on that bill. Very few people actually follow up. And I think it would be a good idea for this committee to help build credibility and build those relationships to take that extra step and follow up with those individuals and thank them for hearing our concerns and acting accordingly.
Why's everybody looking at me? I think that's a great idea. I could really help support that with some of these different areas where we went out, and let me give credit where it's due. I was not the most hands-on player at the legislature. The chair of the Association of Clerk and Recorders, legislative chair is Regina Flattenberg. She's the election administrator from Ravalli County. And she was there for every important bill. She worked so hard. I can work with her to help pull up, hey, who are the people we should say thank you so much for helping with this process? Because it's a huge list. As we go through here, I'm going to get really quick on the next ones, but I can help pull that information together. And I think saying thank you for working with elections, not just in Missoula, but across the state, could be really, really helpful. I'm going to zip through these next ones so that I can be mindful of everybody's time. We increased the audit. So the post-election audit will have more precincts counted and more races counted. As we go through this, we bill the Secretary of State's office for the cost of doing our post-election audit. We said, yes, we can do more work to make sure it's accurate, and the Secretary of State will flip the bill. Foot the bill. We did have another one that went forward, and it moved some of the municipal elections. I think this one's dead now. Moved municipal elections to even numbered years. We will be running through. We will be going and having forward a continuous count. Looks like that's going to be pretty well set in. There's always a chance things change at the legislature. We're preparing for that now. One of the big things is that with the continuous count, we still get the ability to count ballots on Monday. This is critical. When I took over, we did not have that ability. And in 2018, the last time we ran through, you need to start counting on Tuesday and run through till the completion. This meant that our final election results came out on Thursday, which was over 48 hours without sleeping. And it's really hard. I've always been a strong proponent that people do better work when they're rested.
I think science backs you up.
As we go through this, it had been a strong request. And it's not that far off from where we were before. We've been finishing regularly mid-afternoon on that Wednesday. We'll be finishing very early morning on that Wednesday at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning. And you know what that means for most voters? They wake up and their election results are complete. There's always a fine balance. We will go through, we will be doing post-election audits, and we will be double checking all of our information through the canvas and the audit. If we find that running through here has led to more errors, we can bring that up in the next legislative session. I've been saying quite often, the pendulum swings both ways.
I think with that bill, are there concerns or differences that you're going to need for staffing?
So that's one of the biggest things is that, yes, when we ran this, we used to close at about midnight so that everybody could get some rest. Finding night owls who want to come in at 12 midnight and run through until the finish is an incredibly hard ship to staff. That being said, with these new requirements on reaching out to different central committees for additional people, that's our best place to start.
Great.
Hey, we are now both doing continuous count and reaching out to the different political parties in order to help make sure these boards are staffed and maintain a balance. We need you to volunteer people who would like to come in at the midnight to 8 a.m. shift.
So, I note that you have listed here that you oppose this bill. This is the continuous count legally able to be counted.
Yeah, and so we had to work a little bit because every ballot that's legally able to be counted, language was in that bill. The Secretary of State is guaranteed that means that we can pause the process on Monday. As the chief election official, they'll issue out a directive stating that this is what every county can do. And the reason we opposed it was because we don't feel like people do their best work at midnight. That's going to be our hardest shifts to staff. But the elected officials who are making the laws were elected through this process. It's important they get the opportunity to pass through, hear these. When we're not in support of it, it's very likely going to happen. So it wasn't
Explain to me what it actually means.
legally able to be counted.
The works. But continuous count, what is that?
That means that we can't pause the process on Tuesday.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yep. And so we'll run through until about 5.
In other words, you have to keep counting without shutting down for the night and starting again the next morning
On Tuesdays.
on Tuesday.
Yep.
Okay.
And so
Which-
that was a big concern.
I understand that's the way the law was until 2019, right?
Yes, but the early counting that was added in 2019 is what we really didn't want to lose.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because now we start on Monday and we count a vast majority of our ballots on Monday. So we can shift back our time to start on Tuesday. We cannot have people running for 48 hours straight. We will be running later into the evening. I don't function that well at midnight.
So then they're gonna mandate you have to make your first report at 8 PM Tuesday and every 2 hours thereafter.
2-hour intervals for reporting, which is what we strive to hit anyway. And we'll work really closely with the county attorney's office. We had an issue that came up in the 2022 election, and our first set of results were not posted to the Secretary of State's website in that 2-hour interval. We'll have to decide what we do at that point in time. Do we provide out inaccurate election results, or do we face a potential fine for not providing our results at 8 PM and making sure that the results we did provide were accurate? As we go through that, that'll be something we weigh out, but we also have the chance to go through, test, double check, and we've already created stopgap measures to prevent what happened the last election. So with this one, it's a fine balance. If we had to start and run everything continuously without being able to count on Monday, strong opposition. The results would be out much later and people would be exhausted. We're still exhausted, but what it's doing is it's trying to get these accurate results out to everybody at the same point in time. I did a lot of discussion with people about what and where and why. It's hard as an election administrator not to take some of these things very personally. There were other counties that were off by 1 ballot, so they didn't upload their results to the Secretary of State's webpage until they could confirm what happened with that 1 ballot following days. Voters didn't know what was going on. The information wasn't out there. We had really clear information from our office as to when we would be counting, when we would be pausing, when we would be starting again. And we felt like we were doing a very good job. And guess what? It's not all targeted to Missoula County. This is across the state to try and get these results out sooner for everyone, noting no results are final until the provisional count on Monday and the canvass post-election audit. And I did want to talk really quickly about hash validation. This is something that we had supported. It is a portion of the run through on the post-election audit. So during the post-election audit, it is a request to validate all of the equipment. And what it does is it utilizes special software to confirm that the equipment was running on the right firmware and hardware that it should be running on. We supported this with a big caveat that, hey, depending on how long it will take, it's about 2 hours per piece of equipment. We're going to have to contract that out. We're going to have to work closely on this, but there are many people who claim that there was something with the firmware or software of this equipment that caused that issue. The Secretary of State covers the cost of this post-election audit. If this helps voters feel more confident, it doesn't impact directly our taxpayers here with an additional cost on that. That's something that we said, yes, let's make people feel more confident in that. And then there's another bill directly above that, which would require cast vote records. I go both ways. We support this bill. A cast vote record is a digital copy of every ballot that the tabulators have run.
It's not the copy of the ballot.
And it's the votes off of the ballot. It's not an
It's the results off the ballot. So
Yep.
it doesn't show the dots.
It doesn't
It
show
shows
dots.
this ballot's had this person voted for. So
Yeah.
it's a different format than, it's not a scanned ballot.
The concern with it is really around if there is a ballot style that has 1 or 2 voters, it can damage ballot secrecy. On the other side, it directly mirrors exactly what we counted, exactly what we've audited, and exactly what we produced to the record. Sometimes we'll combine those small ballot styles into overall results. And as we see that, there are potentials, especially in very small local elections, to be able to expose voter secrecy. We also had more records requests for a cast vote record than any other records request we've ever had. And it mirrors exactly what we're putting out towards our website with an additional level of detail that we don't show to that website.
Because it also tracks little pieces of metadata, like the times that the ballots pass through the scanner. So you can reconstruct a graph of.
It's all coming from the same source,
Yep,
right?
it's all
Yeah.
the same. It all matches identically. If it makes people feel more confident, I'm on board with people
Sure.
feeling as confident as I do in the
Right.
elections.
But prevents the aliens from coming in and changing.
And it helps make sure that, boy, yes, the machine that we just audited shows what we just had and matches everything across. One of the things that came through that we actually ended up supporting was removing grant funding from elections.
Can I ask you about-
Yep. It became a political hot potato. When we had received grant funding to run the 2020 election, it helped us do the best outreach we'd ever done in an election. We also happen to have the highest turnout of any election, ballot return rate of any election. I feel strongly that they're incredibly well linked to the support we were able to provide. Many people felt that that should not be taking place. This was one of the areas where the politics became so much that we decided that, yes, we're not worth going in opposition on this bill. We'll save that for ones that we really need to oppose. And then a couple other ones that had died were some of the ones from the the Select Committee on Election Integrity had produced a slate of bills. Most of those bills did not make it through transmittal. Some had a blast motion and did not make it through that aspect. One of the ones we are watching that we chose to stay out of because it is such a political hot potato is the top 2 vote getters for US Senate from the primary go on to the general election. This one became so politicized so quickly that I had approached this first from a voter understanding viewpoint. And I said, this is going to be a tough one to educate voters on. But with the makeup of the legislature, we decided that we're going to take a back step to this because it became so political. So we're watching that as it goes through. We're watching the combine all elections as it goes through. And then this is a quick update of a few of our other bills. In here, there's links. You can see where they all exist. You can click that. We worked hard to help show where they were. I'm not going to run another update until after the legislative session's done. We're in the middle of an ongoing election. And if there's no other questions about legislation, I want to talk a little bit about the ongoing election and the database. I'm doing really good on time.
You are great.
I just have one thing to add about the legislature. That election security select committee had a lot of video, and the part I really liked about it was the Secretary of State's office guy got on there and explained, answered all their questions. And then they had somebody from ESNS talk about the security on the tabulators. And then he came back on so that all those naysayers could ask him questions. And by the time he was done, everybody was saying that they were fairly confident with the tabulators. And they were like, yeah, you should do this hashtags or the hash
validation.
Yeah, so if you want to kill some time, I thought it was very enlightening.
It was great. Stuart Fuller from the Secretary of State's office, somebody we worked closely with, really did a great job of helping to explain procedures, sets of laws. Regina Plettenberg came in there, represented election administrators, and then they had Chris Wasalich from ESNS. He's the chief of security. He's the person that we've been working with as we're implementing the Secretary of State's new security rules and asking questions about how we can best perform elections, utilize technology, and keep our equipment safe and secure. There's one of the big reasons we supported that hash validation. Then we found out how long it took, and we said, hey, we'll build that in here. And it's really tough. We want people to feel confident. And if a few extra hours after federal elections helps that happen, we can help make sure that happens.
That's 2 hours per machine.
2 hours per machine. And so
We have 7, right?
So it must,
we have
every line of code, basically.
27 polling locations that all have an ADA piece of equipment we'll need to check. And then the 5 850s, as well as our 2 reporting systems. Those reporting systems, we always have a backup system. I don't know if I would hash validate the backup system because I don't load the election to it. I just have it so that if something goes wrong, we have a redundant system.
Can you batch them? Is it like sequential, or can you batch like a certain number at a time?
They require you to use a secure hardened computer to check the other way.
So it's sequential.
And so with 2 computers, we may be able to be running 2 pieces of equipment throughout this, but we will be adding substantial time to the post-election audit, which has a set start time, a set finish time, and must take place before the canvass. We'll be buttoning things up pretty closely in order to complete that. These were the concerns that we didn't know. I'd watched that video and I was like, yes, let's do this. Oh, 2 hours? Oh, okay.
Requiring the hardened computer.
I don't know whether that comes via the Secretary of State or ES&S request to hook them up to that equipment. Okay, the last area, the ongoing election. Ballots mailed tomorrow. May 2nd, we have a school district election. That is a county-wide election. Almost every single person in the county is getting a ballot. There's a very few number of people who live in an area that's not in the school district in our county, and they will not be receiving a ballot. There are levies for both high school districts, elementary school districts, many of the surrounding elementary school districts. And in addition to that, we have an election for the Lolo Community Council, Sealy Lake Rural Fire District, and to create the Clinton Community Council. So the commissioners placed this on the ballot to be voted on. If it's successful in this, we will create a Clinton Community Council to represent that community and help make sure that their viewpoints are presented towards the commission and help shape that area. So as we go through this upcoming election, we're in full-blown election mode. 76,000 ballots going out in the mail tomorrow,
Roughly.
So with this, we have a brand new voter database. And part of the plan on the brand new voter database was implemented in the small elections. Our upcoming municipal election will be smaller than this current election. We've run into multiple different issues with this database. In the last meeting that we had, I'd mentioned to you that I'd chosen to abstain from that vote to proceed forward on the database because I hadn't been able to participate in the testing. And I felt like it needed a full end-to-end testing instead of just parallel testing and a stress test. As we go through this, we're finding multiple areas that were missed during parallel testing. We were working closely with some fantastic people at the Secretary of State's office to correct and fix these errors. We must use the voter database prescribed through the Secretary of State's office. Examples of errors we ran into were labels not being able to print for mail ballots with a font text large enough to be read. It was 0.7, and I did not want to send those through the post office scanners just to come back as undeliverable, noting that that would delay time and a shortened mailing time for a school district election. We worked for, what, a week and a half to get labels to be produced that were appropriate. They don't fill the full label. And
I mean, to be fair, we're still fighting that a little bit because they still don't fill the label, but they're legible.
They have barcodes that scan. This was the start of some issues that we ran into. We also had other issues come forward, like in some of the list requests that came out, it was changing the city to other counties. We had some voters that were dropped. We had canceled voters receiving ballots through the election. Those ballots can't be accepted, but it's producing them and going through the process, and we've been working hard to pull them all from mailing. There's an error that we found on Friday that is getting fixed tonight, which was producing duplicate stub numbers. We utilize a unique stub number on every ballot, but what was happening is if somebody moved from one election to one area of Missoula County to a different ballot style in a different election, it would take it from stub 500 and it was 501 in the new style. That could be a jump up from 27, or it could be backwards from 47,000. So it was issuing these duplicates. We reported that to the state. They've been working hard to get that corrected. We utilize a very standardized report that comes out of the database to confirm that the ballots that are physically present are the ballots we have recorded and accounted for. And the data that was presented on that report did not match the data from those ballots. It was omitting voter ID numbers. It was changing ballot ID numbers to voter ID numbers with a 1 dash in front of them.
Oh, that's what the, and birthdays.
And so there was weird items coming out on these reports. And today, before this meeting, I worked closely to come up with a workaround that would work to produce a report. We've been able to get it to something that works well. Will provide us the same batch report so we can check off those physically present ballots. The biggest difference is we like to utilize the stub number between the envelope, the ballot, and that report. And the report does not contain a stub number. But it does say Bradley Seaman. So you can say, well, this one for Bradley Seaman is physically present and accepted, and check it off by the name. The difference is we use humans to do this process. And then they go, I remember Bradley. Do you remember Bradley? And it's not as efficient as number 612. But the team has been working tirelessly at the state. Everything we've come up with that feels like a larger issue has been getting resolved. We're still running into some things that we're trying to figure out, and the election is ongoing. Our best solution is we're CCing in the Secretary of State's office on all of our list requests. We are so happy to provide you this report of ballots for this election. Also see SOS Elections Help, who's attached to this email if you have questions about how this report gets generated. It's a tough area to be in. It's not a small election. It's not a little deal. Election offices across the state of Montana have been under high scrutiny for the last few years. So everything is important. We're receiving great support at the state level. It's better this year than it would be in an overlapping school and federal election with election judge training. We've got an opportunity to go through this process and work on items. We're just lucky to be in Missoula where we have a $76,000 election going forward. As we see this, we'll be pulling them back in, and the other things we've been working closely on are items like increased speed of processing. We needed to match what we had out of the previous database. And one of the questions I always get is really about why did we do this? And it is 100% security. I get way in over my head, but whatever version of Oracle they were using is no longer supported with updates due to the servers and the required programs. So they moved this in and they had a few options. Figure out some way to pull the old database onto a more secure area, or look at a new database, noting that this one comes from the 1990s, felt like it came from the 1990s. And this one gives us such better integration into being able to utilize it on multiple different computers, as well as GIS integration, geographic information systems. So what that means is every voter lives at a point on the map, and every point is associated with an address. We've been working, Nathan and his team have been working incredibly hard with our GIS team to make sure that every voter has a point, every point is on that map, and we can help get those updated.
I have a quick update on that, honestly, and I can interject real quickly here. We had a list of 7,000 address points that were undefined in the database, and over the last month or so, we whittled that down and down and down and down and down. And now, having taken all of the ballots that were generated from the system and sent them through our mailing service, Town Mailer, and they've sifted through and sorted them out so we could get the best rate to mail them out. I just got back a handful of 7 ballots that had no city and state on them, so they weren't correctly attached to a point on the map. And I feel pretty good about going from 7,000 points that made no sense to the system to 7.
And those were all changes in the GIS database that got those to match up, or?
Well, there were points that just weren't associated with an existing address point. So as you know, with the
So they added address
where we went in and manually added address points to accommodate voters who.
And then GIS mirrored that.
Yes.
Now it gets a little bit funky. You get to the university and Jesse Hall is 620 Keith Avenue or something like that. And so we're pulling out 911 address points and overriding them with Jesse Hall room 1. Because we needed to be able to establish that point. It needed to be linked to the map that built into our redistricting. It all tagged in together. And I think my first election as election administrator in 2020, we sent out ballots and there was this chunk out in Bonner somewhere and they weren't in the right fire district. And they weren't in the right fire district since 2013. And this GIS integration helps us catch that data, make sure that data is correct. And while it was a huge push, Nathan took charge on that. He's been doing a ton of work on that. It was a huge push. Now that we've gotten this there, we used to audit before every election and go through to try to find those. And inevitably one house would be on the border and not correct. And now with this level of data, the computer programs designed to do this are doing this work for us. It feels good. So there's ups and downs on the new database. I don't think it's going to have a material impact to the election or to voters in the election. Is it a lot of learning and jumping through hoops for us and workarounds? Absolutely. That's the goal. Figure it out now so that when we hit the big times next year, it runs really smoothly. But I don't want to speak for everybody in our office. I'd rather do 3 times the work now to get it all ready to go than dive into this in a federal presidential election year.
Good work, Nathan, and team getting those numbers now. It's pretty.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It is really amazing. And, you know, we've done work with different groups that have said, hey, let's look at this list. Where is this? What's going on? Well, we're catching some of that. And some of this we're not catching. Guess what? There is no 123 East Street apartment 5B. And there's a voter registered there. And it might be that they just have it listed wrong, but their mail's not undeliverable. What do we do? Well, we're not adding that as a point for 911 to go to, but we're working hard to help identify that.
I mean, I'll accept the award on behalf of my team, but I'll pass it on to them. I did the heavy lifting. What I did was, you know, I saw the problems and said, hey.
Gosh, I can stretch out a 9-minute video to like 45 minutes, guys. I really appreciate any questions about any of that.
What does HAVA stand for?
Oh, Help America Vote Act. And so this is easy for us. Every time we have a grant, we can tell you where every single penny of that grant went. We set up budget codes and we spend it out through that grant. What this is asking for the Secretary of State to maintain that same granular level of reporting. And my response is, sure, I'll print you that report and send it on over. I think it's really good to know how this money is spent. Help America Vote Act funding comes and it gets authorized at different times by the federal government. Comes out to the states and it gets a matching grant, and it's usually based off of a set funding amount and population. And then what percentage of this is used for a federal election? So we're getting new door locks at our warehouse that have key card access to help us see when people are going in and out at all times. And the portion of that that's utilized towards federal election, we're able to use this HAVA grant funding for. We'll present that forward, we'll request that funding, we'll have our budget codes, and then the state will have to present that out through to the SAVA committee, State Administration and Veterans Affairs. They oversee elections, and they'll in the off time, I'm losing my words here, when the legislature is not meeting, they'll start discussing this and making sure that we're doing things the best we can.
So this bill isn't going to restrict you from using it for outreach. It just wants additional documentation.
Exactly. And it's not so much, HAVA funding is usually not for outreach as much as equipment, access, and security. And security being the big focus.
Free up county funds then for outreach.
Exactly. We have a grant request in, a budget request in for doors at the warehouse. And we will be supplementing that budget request, turning that money back over to our general fund by using some of this HAVA grant funding to support those costs.
And many other states have this requirement already in terms of the public reporting. And
I have no idea what their public reporting levels are. I felt like when I was reading through this and watching the small portions I did, ours could be bolstered.
I will say that most states that have public reporting, having just written a book chapter on 20 years of HAVA funding.
And so this is one of these things that for me is a no-brainer. You want to know more about how we're spending the money and report that out so everybody can see it? Please. We have that. How many of you have navigated to our budget page and seen our HAVA grant funding in the past? Nobody. That's why it's important. Other questions about anything I've gone over? I know I hit a lot there. And please take a look at this, review these, click on a link if you want to know more, send me an email. I've read these bills so many times. that they all kind of jumble together. But if you say, hey, Bradley, what's up with HB 905? I'll tell you exactly what was going on. And just so you know, it's been tabled instead.
That moves us to new business.
Sounds great. I'm just putting down the time marks.
Like consulting ChatGPT there.
You know, I jump in here for all of these responses. Yeah, new business. As we jump into this, vacancies on the EAC. Right now, we have had a resignation. Clara Bentler, who is our student representative, is graduating. And so she sent this in, and we are going to be posting this month for new post-secondary education positions. We'll work closely with the university to help advertise this. Here's what's happened in the past at this time when there's a vacancy. This is a pattern. Great people get involved, they graduate, they go forward. We'll post this, we'll recruit applicants, and if we don't receive applicants, we'll keep this open until we do. You said you'd already reached out to some people saying that there could be that vacancy in that position coming up.
But now that we know,
it's ready to go. We'll get it posted, and I will be sharing this with everybody through the posting. We want to get that filled in, and if it comes through summer, we'll fill that in as we get to the fall semester when people are getting joined in. We can continue going forward, but we can also, should we have an applicant or applicants, we'll close it after that 1 month period. We'll review those, and then we can reopen it if we don't have them, or extend it if we don't have them. Also, we'd received another resignation. Denver Henderson.
Bradley, is that my cue to say something?
That is your cue right here.
Great.
Denver and I've worked on the EAC for years, so I'd love it if you had an opportunity. I have not yet shared out anything that you sent forward, but yeah, take it away, Denver.
Thanks, Bradley. So first of all, I just want to say I'm sorry I can't be with you in person today. I should have made a point to do that. But serving on the EAC since I think 2016 has been an incredible experience. It has been really eye-opening to get to work with our election staff and to see the world through their eyes. It is incredible how much work gets done behind the scenes that doesn't get reported and doesn't get talked about. But that has been an amazing experience, and it has been so just positive and uplifting working with this committee. And I think we've been able to do some meaningful things. I'm particularly proud of the work that we've done together on getting prepaid postage for absentee ballots. I think that was a substantive change that made it easier for people to vote in Missoula County. And I want to both recognize like the cooperation we had on the committee and frankly, the leadership that we had from our county commissioners. Because no matter how good our ideas might be in this committee, most of the time it takes money and it takes leadership from our elected officials. And they just did a fantastic job. There's other things that we've worked on. I'm not going to go over a comprehensive list, but just to say it's been an incredible experience, and I so appreciate the opportunity to work with you guys. I have every confidence that this committee is going to continue the work that we started, and if there's any way that I can be helpful in the future, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. Best of luck.
So does that mean you're resigning?
I am resigning my position.
Last week, Denver sent in a letter of resignation, and I wanted to give him the opportunity to talk with you all. It has been so exciting to come from a person who is concerned about elections and served as an alternate to a county position, to an administrator, and working with each of you. And Denver has been a portion of this committee since I think 2016, 2018, and it has been, we've done a lot. It's been fantastic. The continuity, the continuation of people continuing to come in, knowing history, and serving forward has been so great for this committee. And Denver, I'll absolutely be sending you invites to election judge training, letting you know when we're doing our post-election audits. There'll be a marathon. It'll be fantastic. And I want to say I really appreciate your service.
Yeah, I'd second that, Denver. I really enjoyed working with you. You bring a commitment and a professionalism to your ideas that's really remarkable. So thank you.
Thank you, Todd. I appreciate that. Thank you, Bradley.
I would second that. My first response is boo, but no, you got a lot going on. I appreciate your conscientiousness and your dedication to making elections better. Yeah, I've enjoyed working with you over the years as well.
Thank you, Travis. I appreciate that.
Denver, I was still processing your letter, and I promise I won't hold it against you in your academic career, but I have a benefit of getting to continue to work with Denver outside of the EAC, and I just, I'm following in your footsteps here, and so I want to thank you so much for your service to the Missoula community and your passion for democracy. You certainly will be missed on this committee, but we know that we'll be able to find you in town.
You absolutely will.
So personal question then, it sounds like you're going to be doing some extended education.
Yeah. So about a year ago, I started down the track of the Master's in Public Administration program. And so I've had the opportunity to continue to work with Dr. Barsky. And let me just put in a shameless plug. It's been an incredible experience. I've learned a lot, almost as much from the other students as I've learned from the professors. It's a really engaging kind of student experience that I have never, personally been a part of before. And I just can't say enough about the program. So I'm excited to continue and to finish that program, and we'll see where it takes me.
Good, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Denver.
So if you hear of anybody that's interested, if you know anybody that's a student in post-secondary education in Missoula County, let them know about this opportunity.
And I'll be sending out information. I've been working to turn around these minutes as quick as possible. That way it doesn't sit on my to-do list. It's out. I've had requests from the public. Are you doing another meeting? Are you going to post it to YouTube? And I had to say, yes, actually, that is required by law. As we go through that, we'll be going and we'll be plugging that in. I'll be getting that out, and I'll be making sure that there's information about that. And I also will start working closely on some of these bullet points you can use to encourage people to participate in the next steps of redistricting. So you'll be getting some emails from myself, from Kyla, and we'll be getting those out. And please, recruiting great people for the EAC is critically important. One is the post-secondary education. So anybody who is in post-secondary education, and I think at least part-time. And then the other is at-large membership. So this can be from anywhere. And one of the big requests was different communities, rural communities, underrepresented communities, trying to help make sure that we cover a vast swath of Missoula, not just people who hang out at the courthouse all day. Like me. That's I guess is what I was saying.
Let's Jackie and then
Sorry, I'll be quick. Is there, speaking of someone who came in as an alternate, is there someone waiting in the wings?
Let me double check this. The way that this has gone in many cases from the county commissioners who make the final appointments is that if the alternate person is interested in proceeding forward towards another position, they have the ability to apply as well, and they may get a preferential. Sure. They're gonna get a preference. There we go. I need to confirm that because the way that these go through for me is I just sit in on the interviews because I've been a part of your guys' work. I work with the elections office, and it's really the county commissioner's forward. And this is where we're gonna make recommendations to them about what looks good, what's next. I mean, this is where they see stuff like this, they hear it through. And the questions that we had and hear the discussion we had, so important. I'm writing the note on that, Kat.
Just a
Thanks.
sort of a comment. When we instituted the student position, the idea was to get young people involved. So Denver, you would not be eligible probably.
That is correct.
So I guess the idea would be try to pick someone who's undergraduate, and not a non-grad.
You better check the bylaws.
And it's interesting. I remember this discussion. This was something that really went through a lot of discussion as we created.
Mhm.
We wanted this to be open, post-secondary education part-time. What does that mean? If you make that solid pitch that going to the technical school is your post-secondary education, going to the beauty school is your post-secondary education, there is nothing to prohibit those, and we want a wide variety of applicants. The goal is make it a tough decision for the commissioners. Not necessarily just we have one person who's a poli-sci undergrad and they're going to be a good fit. So wide swath with that. And I remember so much discussion about what does post-secondary education mean? And they said, let's not define it too tightly because then it limits us. And so with that, yeah, if you're getting an MPA, you're engaged and you have the ability to take it on, you're a superhuman individual and please sign up. Also, if you're a non-traditional student, if you are going to a tech school, going to a different form of education, please apply. And if you have any questions about that, I'm not the one to answer, but I can definitely get you to the right spot. So Denver, you may not fully be out. You may-
Yeah, I think I probably fit the letter of the law, but maybe not the spirit of the law now that I'm
Exactly.
squarely middle-aged. But
I like this squarely. Perfect. And I will, you'll be on an email to some communications folks to see if we can put an advertisement or an announcement in the campus wide that goes to both Missoula College and just advertising, that this is an option for students. That's one way that we can make sure to get it out. And then I talk to students about it all the time.
And when I send that out to everybody else, if you know of something that's not that traditional path, and you know of somebody who's interested, please, let's see what we can do to loop people in. I mean, I want to cast as wide of a net as we can.
Okay, that wraps up new business. The next point on our agenda is comments from committee members. Does anybody have comments that they would like to share?
Well, I would like to re-comment on I think it's important that we have people under age 28 bringing their viewpoint to this, or under 25 even. I would urge the student position to try to be someone that brings a different perspective as I look around at this demographics here. So that's my only comment. I mean, where their education is occurring, I think is absolutely immaterial. But I do think that the age brings a perspective that, well, I certainly would like to hear, because my perspective now is 50 years past that. That's half a century.
So is the term ending when they're graduating?
So they need to be in that at least part-time in post-secondary education. And so that's what's been catching us is
So can we kind of change the rules? So maybe if you can join us when you're in school, you could stay on for like 2 years because some of those schools don't go for that long. I mean, it's a year-long program or something.
yes, we can approach bylaw changes and What we could do is see if that's something we want to like add to the agenda for the next election. I can help with getting those to a, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Getting them to a good point and saying, hey, here's what we're looking at, because the term is a full 3-year term. What has happened regularly is our best, brightest people tend to be people who are super engaged in that senior year.
Right, they were just getting ready to.
And so as we go through this, it could allow to keep somebody in who might have a great understanding, have that continuity, know what's going on, and still be in there. Now, the thing that I really want to watch is that when this was created, it was designed to make sure that there was something with that from our side, the election side. It was wanting that connection and familiarity with the university. As I've been graduated for a longer period of time, I go back there and I go, who do I talk to see about getting a booth? And having that knowledge was so important to us. Now, as we extend that to all post-secondary, that changes a little bit and we can look more demographically, look more, and we can absolutely propose a change to the bylaws. Had this been 3 years ago, I'd have said, Cameo, bylaw changes are not super popular right now. We can look at it, but let's do it once. With this, I think that's a great idea to look at, and we could come together and we could make that as an agenda item, go through and really have a good discussion on that.
So would it also include like students that are online? Like maybe they're going to the University of Arizona, but they're.
We had some applicants that were online, yep.
They have to be Missoula County resident. Oh,
Right,
Yep.
yeah.
Resident here, living here, but if you were attending George Washington, part-time, great.
As it stands now, right?
Yeah. And we can look at those in the bylaws.
Okay, anything else?
That's it for me.
I think the youth voice is important, younger people's voice is important, because they are in a different world, but. I had explained a Jerry Maguire meme the other day, and that made me feel really old. Okay, hearing nothing else, the next point is establishment of the next meeting date, which we have Tuesday, July 11th at 3 p.m.
Yes, that will be the next official EAC meeting. You guys are not spared that much. You will hear from me substantially because we would like to be finalizing our redistricting and pulling in place plan around that. I'm also hoping to include in the same period of public comment a different redistricting portion that we do around commissioner districts. And so I want this to get the same public input and feedback that we're offering to our precincts. So we can look at all of that. I want to make sure that we've gotten great email, great communication, good responses. Guess what? You all can respond and put comments in on the redistricting plans, commissioner plans. And then as we go forward, I want to keep that with that Tuesday, July 11th. It'll be gorgeous. It'll be really nice, but we should do it somewhere inside so we can record you.
So keep your eyes and ears peeled for requests from Bradley in the interim. And I think that you've given us a charge of making sure we share the opportunity for public comment in the redistricting conversation. So we'll make sure to put that on our to-do list. With that, the next point is adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Kind of like to hang out.
Abstentions?
Extension.
All right.
I don't think you have a vote.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Bye.
Andrew, hope to see you around.
Bye. It's great to see you, Rebecca.
Rebecca, bye, Kathy.
Bye, Susan.